Hey everybody, how are you? Um, my name is Paul. I get to be one of the pastors here at Crossroads. Maybe you're jumping on for the first time, or maybe Facebook and YouTube have become your new normal, and you can't believe that you've been uh, on your computer so much this week, or maybe your iPad or your phone. But I'm so happy and so glad that you decided to join us and to join me. I'm going to be right here with my iPad, and I see you all jumping on. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to give people just a few minutes to kind of jump on and to join in with us. Just want to give you just a highlight of what I'm going to be talking about today. Um, Man, I can't believe that we're living through and living in the days that we are. Um, I was talking to a lot of people about this, and maybe you want to comment to me today about this, but do you guys remember 9/11? How many of you guys remember 9/11? And I was trying to remember all the different things that happened around 9/11 and sharing those stories to some people that were just little kids when that happened. And I remember all the new rules and regulations that we had during 9/11. Can you guys remember some of them? Maybe you could comment some of them. They were just some crazy things that happened. I remember going to the airport and to pick up my mom after 9/11 and being so upset that I couldn't get to the gate or couldn't get to certain places in the airport. And then I kind of correlate that in my mind to now where it's, I have to be 6 feet away from somebody. And I was thinking, I was in Whole Foods the other day and I was standing on one of those blue lines. And I don't think we'll ever be the same again standing in line. It's really strange. I was standing there on the blue line and waiting my turn to go up and pay. And there was a woman who just kind of came up and stood right behind me. And I didn't even think about it, and I just shot her this. I guess it was some kind of glare or some kind of like get out of my 6 foot space like glance, and she was like, "I'm so sorry that I'm too close," and I just remember I said to her, I was like, hey, no big deal, like I'm not offended, but how many things are going to be different? How many things are going to be completely changed when all this is over? And man, we're just praying for that day that all this is over. But I don't think it's ever really going to be over. It's just going to change us in how we are. And in some ways, it's going to change us for the good. And I think sometimes, it's going to bring out some bad in us. But man, thanks for so many people that are jumping on with us. I just want to jump in to today's topic. And today's topic is fear and anxiety. And I see and can just imagine everyone who's watching today just being like, yeah, tell me about something that I don't know about. And I just want to share from my own life as someone who I guess would not really be a regularly fearful person. There's not a whole lot of things that I'm afraid of. I mean, other than clowns, I don't prefer clowns. It's not that I'm afraid of them per se. I don't prefer them around me and my space where I am. It doesn't bother me if you appreciate clowns, but for me, or if you are a clown or entertainer in that way, I don't want to offend you, but I just find them a little creepy. And but other than that, there's not a whole lot of things that I'm really afraid of. Other than things that, well, I guess heights, and maybe there are a lot of things that I'm afraid of, right? So like I don't really know that I'm afraid of the thing until I'm around the thing, right? So I can watch a video of a snake and I'm like, I'm not really afraid of a snake. But then when I'm around a snake, I don't really feel comfortable around a snake. I mean, have you ever been around a person who really is comfortable with a snake? I think of Becca Petrie, and maybe she's watching in Alaska. Shout out, Becca, who used to come to my house as one of our students, who would have snakes in her sweatshirt. And at any given time, she could just pull a snake out. And I would say, Becca, you're comfortable around snakes. When you came to my house and you had snakes in your sweatshirt, I thought you were crazy. And so there are things that we're afraid of and things that we have anxiety about, but we don't really know about those things until we experience them. And I think that's where we are right now as a country and as just people, as humans around the world. And I don't really want to say like as a country, because this is a global situation. I'm praying with our family in Nicaragua now as they're all wearing masks and they're seeing the cases rise in El Tamal and the areas there in Nicaragua. And I have friends in Ecuador and friends in Asia and friends in Europe, and they're all kind of dealing with this again all at one time. But it just makes us so it's a human thing, and fear and anxiety are human things. And so we're living in uncertain times, in a time when we can't really see and we don't really know what's happening. And it seems to be that Christians are the ones and the people in culture that everyone looks to be not afraid of anything. Like, you're not afraid of this because you know God, right? And you're a person of faith. I've had many people say to me, well, you're a person of faith. Like, tell me what I should do. Tell me how I should not be afraid. And I want everyone to just remember that even though we are people of faith, we're still, we're humans of faith. And even though we have faith in God, and even though we trust Him and we know Him, we still have fear. And we still have anxieties. And those things are normal. So if you're at home right now, like I was just a few minutes ago, and today maybe didn't start the way you wanted to, you have a packet from York County Schools or Newport News schools that you're trying to work through, and you feel pressure that you're not really a great parent because you can't keep the school day going the way that it should, or maybe even something breaks in your house. Like a week or two ago, my coffee maker, my Keurig broke, and it was a crisis in my house, right? And so some of these things are just compounded on top of each other. But as Christians, man, we deal with anxiety, we deal with fear, and we deal with depression. It's not a bad word. And I know a lot of people believe that Christians can't deal with depression, and I just want to tell everyone out there that that's just not true. It's just not the case. Depression, in its simplest form, is literally just fear and anxiety that gets detached from reality sometimes. And sometimes it's based in fear and reality that's completely rational. And then it becomes a long-term situation, and it becomes irrational, and we don't know why it happens. So I just want to let you know, sit back, relax. Let's talk about fear and anxiety. All right. So you're not broken, and you might look at the world and not know what the future holds. And man, I tell you, you are so normal. You are so normal right now. As someone who gets to talk to people all the time that struggle with anxieties and fears, I want you to know, I'm looking at myself and I'm like, man, this is normal. This is normal to be afraid of something that we don't really understand. But I want to say something really important, and we're going to kind of shift because I can tell you a lot of bad news, right? I can tell you numbers and stats today and reasons why you should be afraid and worried and things like that. But one of the things I want to say is that our faith in God and our relationship with Jesus is it's key to helping us deal with anxiety and fear. It's going to be key. Like, our relationship with Jesus is going to be so key. It's interesting to me. that the most frequent command in the Bible, do you guys know what it is? Comment if you do. It's do not be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't fear. And I see a lot, if you kind of Google this, you'll see a lot that, there's 365 mentions of do not fear in the Bible, and it's just not true. But there are a lot. There's over 170 times and commands of do not be afraid. And I got thinking last night, why is it that God has to tell his people and to command sometimes from his own mouth, do not be afraid? How many times that Jesus said, don't be afraid, do not fear? It's interesting that, on that first Easter, as we're kind of rolling into that time, people would saw Jesus for the first time. Whoa, don't be afraid, don't fear. Because we're not used to seeing things that we're not used to seeing. And this pandemic and this virus that's invisible, we can't even, put our finger on. It's not a common enemy. It causes anxiety and fear. And this command, do not be afraid. Why do you think that it's commanded? Well, it's just like any other command. It's because sometimes we need to be told to do it, even though we don't feel like doing it. And during this time, I think it's important for us to lean into these times and these scriptures that ask us and say, don't be afraid. Put your hope, put your trust in me. Even though you don't feel it, do it anyway. It's a command. And so sometimes for me, the way that I have dealt with anxiety, depression, fear in my life is to sometimes kind of do what David did and say, why are you downcast, soul? Why are you so unsettled inside? Put your faith in God. Like, give yourself a new command. And so in a minute, I'm going to give us some few things we can do to help deal with anxiety and fear. But man, God is commanding us to just to lean into him and to lean into his command that he has us, he's got us. God's not commanding us to be people without fear and anxiety. He's not commanding us to do that. He's just commanding us to do something when we feel fear and anxiety. So that's what he's saying. So he says, like, when you feel fear and anxiety, don't just stay there. It's a symptom. It's something that we feel on the inside that's supposed to make us do something. And he's giving us a command. Don't be afraid. Trust me. Don't forget the second part of that. It's not just don't be afraid and pretend like everything's fine. It's don't be afraid. Trust me. He knows that we're uneasy about things we can't see. It's tough. As I said before, this isn't a common enemy that we can just say, that's who I'm supposed to be frustrated with. And sometimes it's just authority right now. Like we're just frustrated with 6 feet. Or we're frustrated with this being closed or that being closed, or excess amounts of time. So what do we do when we have fear, anxiety, worry, and dread? So I just want to go through a few things. I've got like 5 things that I want to give you, and then we'll be done. All right. So the first thing I think is super important, and I think probably the most important thing to do when you experience anxiety, fear, dread, worry, depression, is to acknowledge that you're feeling that. Not to say, I'm not feeling this isn't something that's really happening to me, there's probably some other reason for this, but to acknowledge that it's happening. And then I think it's really important that we allow ourselves to redeem our negative thought patterns. To acknowledge our negative thought patterns and then to redeem them. And let me explain what that means. Let me just say, like, if I was saying, hey, I'm afraid that I'm going to get sick. I'm afraid that COVID-19 is going to get me. And it's going to get my family. It's going to get my friends, my loved ones. And I have serious fear and anxiety about going outside or being or doing anything. I feel really pinned in and shut up. In that worry, which is rational, is there a but God moment that can be interjected into that, a but God thought? So we have this negative thought that I'm gonna get sick, I'm gonna die, I'm getting a little panicky. But what if I phrase it like this? I worry that I might get sick, but God has provided for me for today, and I know that He will for tomorrow, no matter what happens. So in that way, I can take the negative thought that I have, and I can kind of redeem it and allow God to put to enter into the conversation. Allow Him to come in and speak to our worry. God has something to say about your thoughts. Talk to Him about them. He hears them. He knows them. Talk to Him about those thoughts. Worry doesn't have to be alone. God wants to enter in the conversation. Number 2, get to know. First, before I move on, I had a verse I wanted to share with you. And I was thinking last night, I was like, man, of all the worry and anxiety verses, like, what in the world am I going to say? Which is the greatest one, right? And I'm not sure this is the greatest one, but I want to share this one with you. Philippians 4:8 says this: "Now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing." Of course, they must have been worried, and they must have also been not fixing their minds on the things that they should have. And Paul says, fix your thoughts on what's true. Fix your thoughts on what's true. Allow the truth of God's word, the truth of your friends and your family, people who care about you, allow that to enter into your mind. Allow that to settle into your heart. Allow it to take root in your heart rate. Let the truth affect that. What is affecting your heart rate? Is it worry and dread and anxiety, or is it the truth? Think on what's true, what's honorable, what's right, and what's pure. There's a lot of that going on right now. There's a lot of right things going on right now. There's a lot of pure things, good-hearted things going on right now. Think on what's honorable, what's right, what's pure, what's lovely. You know what's lovely? Man, today, have you been outside? Well, today is a lovely day. Today is an incredible day. And God has created it for us to worship Him. And things that are admirable, things that are just good and wholesome. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Like, these are the things that I'm supposed to be focusing my mind on. And I find myself, if I'm not focusing on these things, worry, anxiety, and fear can creep in very quickly. Number 2, get to know God in a more personal way during this time. If you feel anxiety and you feel fear, it's a great time to get to know God in a more personal way. Pastor Aaron's going to be jumping into this on Sunday. It's going to be incredible. You don't want to miss it at 11 on our live stream. And we're kind of wrapping up this series as we've been living in this life with Job through a bad day. And man, has it come kind of true to us. But we're not even close to what Job went through, however. But man, we're still dealing with some of the things, some of the fear and anxiety he must have been fearing. But Aaron will be diving into this. But getting to know God in a different way. I always believe that God is kind of like a prism. He has lots of different sides. And I know when I struggled through some loss and some grief, and I still do, it seems like God kind of turned Himself toward me, and I got to see another face of God. And it's like God has so many faces and so many names, and it's that way because He becomes so personal to us in times of struggle. So allow yourself to get more personal with God. And Job does this in Job 42, 5 and 6. He says, "My ears have heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you." And Pastor Aaron's going to be jumping and drilling down on that on Sunday. It's going to be incredible to see the transformation in Job's heart. That it's not good enough for us to just hear about God and to have a casual faith. One of the things that this whole circumstance should be teaching us is that what is our faith without church? You know, what is our faith without something that is so easily accessible for us? Maybe a friend at work who's a Christian that we get all of our good advice from, that we can't really connect with right now. What is our faith without what our small group has to say? You know, what is our faith now? Our faith has become very personal, and our faith has moved in and it's moved home. And a lot of us, and myself included, have said, man, maybe I don't know Jesus as closely and as well as I should, or maybe I should use this time to get to know him even more. And I challenge you to do that. So get to know God in a more personal way, and we'll find more about that in Job's life on Sunday. Man, it's personal to share things that are going on inside of us. It's really personal to share with God things that are going on inside of us. By the way, he already knows them. But listen to what Peter had to say as someone who knew a lot about fear and anxiety, right? Who got freaked out, and chopped off somebody's ear, right? As someone who jumped out of, boats and, put his foot in his mouth so many times, right? Listen to what he had to say. I love it. 1 Peter 5:7 says, give all your worries and cares to God. And I know some of your translations might say cast all your cares. If you go back to the original language, it's really interesting that cast to me is kind of like what we do with a fishing pole, right? And we kind of cast it out and we cast the line out. And then for me, that seems like it's distance. But in the original language here, it means give. It means place on. It means throw over to, but it's a close connection. So cast all your worries and cares to God because he cares about you. So hand them over. So when you get to know God personally and you get to know he's a God who cares about you, you can hand off some of this stuff because he's not going to fire you because you have anxiety. He's not going to fire you because you have worry. He's not going to fire you and want to get away from you because you have depression. None of these things make you a bad Christian. They make you a human Christian. And I just want you to know that this verse should give us so much hope because our anxiety and our worries and our fears are things that God is asking for. So give them to him, okay? Number 3. Watch for triggers right now, okay? Watch for triggers. What is causing worry? What's causing anxiety in you right now? Is it the guy who is on the news that every time you hear his voice, it's the bad news coming on? The person who breaks in? You know who I'm talking about. I don't know who it is for you, but I have those people, and every time they come on with another announcement, it brings fear and anxiety to me because every time I hear them, we're going to war, right? Or there's an announcement that there's some kind of tragedies that happen. So maybe turn the TV off. I know it's tough to do right now. Read a blog. Actually get educated. Go to the CDC website, cdc.gov, and you read actual reports of what's going on. Remember that everyone has an agenda right now. Everyone has something that they're trying to sell, even if it's fear, even if it's worry. And so I want you to notice the contrast between what God says and in his word of how we're supposed to handle fear and worry and what the media is doing right now. It's not saying cast all your anxiety on God because he cares for you. I really want you to click again and click one more time and read another story. So maybe turn that off. Read a blog, read a book, talk to a friend. Allow God to have the final word. I know that the governor said we have to be 6 feet away from other people, but prayer can't stop anything. I mean, prayer can't be stopped by anything. So I can pray for someone very closely and pray for them very intimately. And I don't have to be 6 feet away. I can be 6,000 miles away. There's a lot of good things that can come out of caring for other people at a distance. Number 4, to continue to develop relationships. Continue to develop relationships. During this time, it's going to be difficult for you to have relationships the way you have. And if you're an extrovert like me, we're struggling right now. But know that maybe there's some relationships around you that should have been developed or need to be developed, and you just haven't had the time to do that. This is a great time to do that. Bump into things again. Bump into new people again. People that you haven't connected with in a long time because you've been busy. It's really great to rediscover those friendships. And those friendships, it's really awesome that many times you don't have to catch up a lot to feel like you're back at home with somebody. And that doesn't take being in the same room with them to do that. So continue to develop new relationships. That's going to really help you with anxiety and with worry and fear. A lot of those people that have been friends with you for a long time that you haven't connected with, many times the reason why we have so much anxiety and fear is because we've let those really great relationships die. And those people have important things that they need to say to us. So let them do it. Lastly, be patient. Be patient. This is a big one for me. There's really nothing to do about this situation, is there? There's nothing we can say, or we wash our hands and we stay 6 feet away and we don't gather in large groups and we're doing what we're supposed to do, but still it seems like we're just going to wait. And what do we do with that time? Being patient is going to include anxiety and worry and fear and dread. And they're all natural realities that we're dealing with right now. Again, like I said before, acknowledge them, but also acknowledge that God wants to redeem that feeling and that emotion. He created it. He made it. Every one of the emotions are equally good, from fear to worry to anger, to sorrow. Man, sorrow is such a loving thing when you're sad because you've lost something. God created all of it. Now, he didn't create, we operate in a sin nature, so we don't use our emotions the way that we're supposed to. And sometimes we let them get out of control. But know that God knows about your emotions, and he's touched with the feelings of them, and he has those emotions as well. It's one of the ways that we can know God is through our emotions. If you're feeling these emotions during this time and as you're waiting and being patient on things to clear up, and you don't feel like you can get out of these negative thought patterns, or you feel like you've been praying but it's just not really going anywhere, and you're feeling these feelings of anxiety a lot, over and over in a long period of time, I just encourage you to reach out to someone. I just want to encourage you to tell a really close friend or a loved one about it. Don't keep it inside. Share it with someone. Of course, you can always reach out to us here at Crossroads. You can reach out to counseling at crossroads.cc. Someone can reach out to you and start a conversation with you that is going to be helpful. And I just want to encourage you to do that. Don't hold it inside. We're all in this together. We're all in this for the long haul. No one's going anywhere. We're going to be right here with you. And I want to leave you with this. It's something I read last night that really brought me a lot of peace. And it's Psalms 91. In Psalms 91, of course, David is a great person to look to right now because he's so real. And he says this: "Those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty. This I declare about the Lord. He alone is my refuge, my place of safety. He is my God, and I trust him." Let that be your rock this week. And as we go into next week, as we jump into Sunday together, man, he alone, there's no one else. There's nowhere else to go. He alone is my refuge. He's the one that I'm taking safety in, and I'm trusting in for my safety. He will rescue you from every trap. And listen to this. And he will protect you from deadly disease. Isn't it amazing that even David, as he was writing, they were struggling with the same thing. What do we do with deadly disease? How do we combat it? There's nothing we can do. He will cover you with his feathers. He will shelter you with his wings. This is a picture of a mother bird gathering her chicks. He will shelter you with his wings. His faithful promises are your armor and your protection. Do not be afraid of the terrors of the night, the times when we can't see. God knows that we're going to be afraid during those times. Or the arrow that flies in the day, the things that strike us, the things that hurt us, the things that wound us. We can't be afraid of those things. They're going to happen. Do not dread the disease that stalks in the darkness, nor the disaster that strikes at midday. And you can continue to read in Psalms 91 how God was able to protect David from his enemies and bring him to a place where he knew that God was with him. And that's my message to you today. What can you do with fear and anxiety, these feelings of depression, these feelings of, man, this is just not normal? No, you've got to acknowledge and change your negative thought patterns. Let God be part of the conversation. Get to know God in a more personal way. We'll talk more about that on Sunday and see what happened to Job as he saw God, not just heard about him, but saw him with his own eyes. Men, continue to develop relationships, continue to pour into others, be patient. Those are the messages that I have for you today. We love you here at Crossroads. I love you, my household, and myself. We're praying for each and every one of you. Continue to love each other well. Wash your hands, stay 6 feet away, do all the things you're supposed to do. Stay at home. And we love you, and we'll see you again on Sunday at 11 o'clock on all the different streaming platforms. Make sure that you jump on with us. We're so excited for all that God's doing in our hearts as we recognize and acknowledge him. We'll see you next time.